and welcome. My name is John T. Sachs, and I'm a partner at Jaltech. And I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, focusing on how to build and sell your financial advisory business. Not often that webinars kick off perfectly on time, and today we're actually a minute early, so I'll get us underway in any event. Joining me today is Pavlo Phitidis. You may have heard him on Radio 702 or Cape Talk, where he's the resident entrepreneur and business growth and content contributor. Through Aurik, Pavlo works with established business owners, getting their business to the next level of growth and value. Pavlo is also an author of 2 books, Sweat, Scale, Sell, and Reset, Rebuild, Reignite. Having known Pavlo for a number of years, I can attest to the fact that his business and team really have a good understanding of how to grow and sell a business. So much so that we have partnered up with Aurik Business Accelerator, and we have formed Aurik Capital, which is a private equity focused Section 12J investment. So if you do have a client who has a Section 12J need in their portfolio, please be sure to reach out to me and I'll gladly assist. But over to the expert in how to grow and sell your business. Pavlo, over to you.
Thank you, John T. Thank you for such a warm welcome. Good, very cold morning, everybody. Up in Johannesburg, it's freezing at the moment, and really frustrating. You know, as South Africans in our heads, we always think that winter lasts a week or two, and we dress appropriately, and we build homes appropriately, and we have offices that function on that reliability. And yet time after time after time after time after time after time, it's never the case. I'm going to be talking very specifically about building a business into an asset of value, how you effectively build, grow, and sell a business. I'm certainly no expert in the world of IFAs and wealth management. I'm not going to be talking around the regulatory issues. I'm going to be talking around the business principles as someone who, through Aurik, has had the very, very fortunate privilege of now working with over 2,700 SMEs across 4 continents at this point in time. For us, an SME is a business doing upwards of 15 million rands a year of annual revenues, moving to about 300 million rands a year of annual revenues. And within that environment, our largest client sits at about 1.5 billion rands worth of revenue, and smallest clients sit just under or just over 10 million rands, mostly in really cool, sexy tech spaces. So I'll be talking to you about the principles that are needed to support the creation of an asset of value. What I'm going to do is enable a slideshow to really guide some of the conversation. I'm going to be looking very, very actively for comments. Thank you, John T. You've just put it up. Please do send comments and questions. I'll be asking a number of questions. I will get to the questions. If I have an answer, fantastic. If I don't, I'll have some thoughts on it. And if that doesn't suffice, I will endeavor to find the most practical response to a question, be it even after the event itself. So with that, bear with me one moment as I share my screen. Okay, let's get this up. Screen number 2. Nowadays, you've got to be careful. I've got 4 screens open in front of me to try and manage these processes. And you should be seeing my screen live now. Fantastic. Here we go. My chat is up. I'm looking forward to questions from yourselves. This event is for you, to your benefit. Please use and abuse anything that we may have to share. You'd be more than welcome. So, good morning all, welcome. We're going to talk about how to build, grow, and sell a business. And the starting point is really just to have a quick look at what's happening in our country. In South Africa, the last year of GDP annual growth rate sat at about 0.13%. I think it will probably close off in February this year, coming at around -5%. And according to all sorts of pundits who are always over-optimistic, the year after we should be moving to about 4%. In that light, over the same period, from an Aurik point of view, the clients that we work with, the businesses that we worked with, those SMEs that I was referring to in the South African portfolio alone, last year they closed off annual compound growth rates sitting at around 29.8%. That's a 29.8% lift in revenues for the 2019-2020 February year end. In 2021, we're expecting to grow at around 25%. So we will be down on revenues by a couple of percent. And in the following year, we're expecting a massive lift of around 50% worth of revenue growth. And the reasons for it are very, very obvious. Within the SME sector, there is a real opportunity to respond effectively, work effectively, and lead the development and growth of your business. Sorry, I can hear that there is a notification coming through. Let me just kill that notification. Sequencing. There we go. It should stop. Hopefully it does. And within the SME sector, when you adopt a growth mindset, despite the economy, despite the environment that we are facing, despite the currency fluctuations, despite the the consistent inability for government to adopt one single economic strategy to support the growth of the environment, despite COVID in its own right, if you have a growth mindset, it immediately sets you apart from many, many other players out there. If you have a growth mindset, it means that you will be doing what you need to do relevant to the economy and the circumstances we find ourselves in comparison to the many, many others who might be waiting for the country to grow in order for their businesses to grow. And that's where we have consistently seen growth emerge within the SMEs that we work with, despite the country circumstances. So let's talk about how we get that right. I want you to share an analogy with you because analogies are enormously powerful. It depersonalizes one in one's own business. And if the analogy is a good analogy, it lets you use a language to communicate some fairly complex ideas in very simplistic terms. Da Vinci said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. I think that the analogy of a ship and sailing a ship correlates very well to the journey that all of us face in building a business. Some of us might remember Jacques Cousteau. I certainly remember him. I was a kid in my single-digit years when I first came across him, and he was this, or no, perhaps it might have been a bit later, he was this explorer. And he inspired me, and I'm sure many, many, many others of us, to want to become marine biologists. He had a ship called the Calypso, and in his journeys and in his sojourns that he undertakes, it's no different to you or I building a business. And I'll tell you why. The first thing is that all of us sail in open seas. And the conditions in the economy, locally, globally, the conditions that determine the future of the economy, the performance in the economy, we are all equally subject to. Some businesses in certain sectors have a slightly harder time, but when you're competing in your own sector, you're competing with businesses who are facing the same hard time, given that they're in the same sector as you. So it's never personal. What's happening in the global economy, what's happening in our local economy is not personal to you and I. It's certainly annoying because things could be better in the local economy, but we can't focus on the local economy for the simple reason that we have no control over it. So what a ship's captain does is recognize that when in sailing, you're sailing in the open sea alongside with everybody else. You simply need to build a better boat and sail more effectively. The second thing is, every ship leaves a harbor to get to a destination. And that destination needs to be very clearly defined, because a good captain of a ship turns around and says, I'm leaving Cape Town harbor, I'm sailing to Hong Kong, it's a 14-day journey, and for that reason, I will provision 18 days of food, fuel, and water, because things go wrong, as they do. The second reason it's so critical is because I can navigate my path to my destination. In a business, we should be using numbers, and those numbers could be client acquisition numbers, they could be financial numbers, there could be a whole host of other numbers, some of which I'll share with you that I think are important. Those numbers rack and stack and support your valuations at the end of the day, but those numbers let you know how to effectively resource your ship to get to your destination safely and also efficiently. A ship has a crew. In this instance, they've got 27 members of the crew. Every crew member has a role. They operate their role and perform their function against a series of checklists or systems. When you depart harbor, when you arrive at harbor, when you hit a storm, everybody knows based on the occasion what they need to do, how they need to do, and when they need to do it in order for the ship to sail safely and arrive safely. It's no different in a business. We constantly need to have the right people doing the right thing at the right time in order to help us get from where we are to where we want to be, our future destination. And then finally, the role of a captain is very specific. You have two places that you can be. The first place, down here, in the hull, below the plinth line, the water line, is the engine room. And the engine room is crucial to turn the propeller, because the propeller gives the ship forward momentum. Without the engine room operating, you stand still. And the longer you stand still, consuming your resources that you had provisioned for the 14-day journey or 12-day journey, the greater the risk of the ship's survivability increases. The engines need to work, and they need to work 12 months of the year. You need propulsion. Alternatively, the captain of the ship can be up on the bridge, and the bridge is a wonderful place to be because you have a 360-degree view around you. You have a dashboard of instruments. The navigation room is right there, and there's even an espresso machine. It's a comfortable place to be. And the purpose of being on the bridge is to ensure that the ship is moving in the right direction to get to its destination. From an Aurik point of view, we fundamentally believe that the destination of every single business should be one thing alone, and that is an asset of value. That is a business that has a brand, and the brand is distinctive. It's not based on a person, it's based on the organization and the relationship the organization has and creates with its customers through experiences. It should have a system of delivery. Every crew member needs to know what they need to be doing, when they need to be doing it, and how they need to be doing it. Everyone in the engine room needs to ensure that the propeller is turning 12 months of the year because you have 12 months of costs. You need team members, purposeful people who know exactly what to do, when to do, and how to do it. If we have systems, activities in a sequence that can be measured and can be taught to ensure that propulsion is working, that meals are being served, that the decks are being kept clear, that the resources are being administered and managed, and that the ship is sailing true and straight, we can then get the right people to operate those systems for us. Every ship needs to progress from where it is to its destination. We refer to that as growth. And ultimately, for every business owner out there, or partners in business, yes, you can build a business that makes money, but alongside with it, you want to create a business that earns capital exits. You're in the business of effectively selling assets, assets that will yield returns for your customers and your clients. In that right, an asset is what you ought to be building. And an asset has three features to it. Number one, it grows its capital value. Number two, it grows its income value. And number three, it is tradable. And that means it does not depend on you. The destination for us all as business owners is to build an asset of value. One destination. So let's talk and see, and let me ask whether you are on that path or not. In the first instance, I'm going to throw questions at you. And please think about the questions. And please, even more boldly, put them on the chat. I would love to hear your thoughts. In hearing your thoughts, I can respond directly to you. What is your mindset right now? Right now, in South Africa, given the conference that's just taken place over the weekend with the ANC, NEC, given our currency, given the inevitable IMF loan that seems to be raised, given the COVID economy, given what you're seeing in the marketplace, given what rubbish you're reading on Facebook, given what you're listening to in the news, given to what's happened to sports, given to the absolute nightmare of turning a home, a place of living, into not only a habitat, but a place of work, a place of teaching, a place of profound relationship management with your families. Given the fact that you've got to pay teams and people when revenues are uncertain, what is your mindset right now? How are you thinking? Next question. What makes your business special? What makes it special? Your industry is very interesting in the sense that ultimately, the products you represent, the products you offer, they're mostly the same. There will be a tweak here or a tweak there. One might have a better product today, but the other will have the same, if not a better product tomorrow. The products are mostly the same. You grow people's money and you protect their money. And the products used to both grow and protect the money are mostly the same. So what makes your business special? How do you tell the world? How do you tell the world? Oh, Kobus, I love that. And Kobus, I follow you. I see a lot of what you post. You certainly do have a positive mindset, a very positive mindset. Silver linings in the dark light of COVID clients. Without a doubt, without a doubt. Very nice contribution. Thank you, Kobus. Thank you for that message. How do you tell the world that you exist? If you believe that you have a business that is special in the minds and experiences of clients and customers, how do you tell them that it's special? Hopefully you show them, but how do you tell other clients that you don't have yet, that you exist and that you are special in relation to them? I know that your industry is driven extensively through relationship marketing. But relationship marketing is highly dependent on an individual and people in their own right. Well, life happens to all of us. People can be phenomenally reliable and extremely, at the same time, unpredictable. How do you create something sustainable that tells the world you exist? How do you spend your time? As a business owner, what do you do and how do you spend your time? I'd like you all to run a quick calculation. For those of you who've been in business for, let's say, 20 years running your business. Okay, I'm gonna call out my trusty device. This helped me get through years of schooling and business school. Love it. I used to call it, I gave it a very religious name. Because you could also program it, you see. So it was super, super smart, especially for an engineer. So let's say 20 years of commitment and hard work. So 20 years. And let's say, you know, South Africans, when I look at South Africans and I compare them to my clients, certainly in the US, in the UK, and in the EU. Okay, US, we're probably equivalent. Hard workers, like we are. UK and EU, on average, the business owners I work with here and in the US are putting in 30% more time per week into building their businesses than those folks in the EU and the UK. Interesting point. So as South Africans, how many hours? Someone send me a chat. How many hours a day do we work? Okay, I've been told to go to my Q&A function. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so on the Q&A, how many hours do you work in a week? No, in a day, an average day, and how many days? So I don't want to tell you what I do because you'd think I have no life, and that can be very, very embarrassing. So 10 hours, Shettle 10 hours a day, Jose 14 hours a day, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous 12 hours. So I'm going to average it out at 12 because 10, 14, 12, let's go with 12. We're in approximately 12. Okay, so let's go for it. 20 years times 12 hours a day times how many days a year would you say you're working? Or let's make this even simpler. How many weeks a year are you working? A 2-week holiday, perhaps? Maybe a 3-week holiday? So should we go at about 49 weeks? 49 weeks. 49 times 20 times, is it a 5-day week or is it a 6-day week? Let's keep it at a 5-day week. Times 5 times 12, 58,000 hours, more or less. That's what 20 years represents and reflects. 58,000 hours. 20 years of doing what you're doing, 58,000 hours of work effort. How do you spend your time today in your business? What is your role in that business? Is your role sitting down and debating and managing the conflict between a husband and wife around an endowment fund? How do you spend the time? As the business owner, how do you spend your time? What is your role? Is growing visiting client after client after client? My last question, what is your destination? How do you price your exit? You know what's interesting for me? For people who have spent time in the game, in their sectors, in their industries, they believe in what they do. They love what they do. They are committed to what they do. They develop relationships with providers, with suppliers, with staff, with teams, with clients, with colleagues, with competitors. And in that, their life has meaning. It gives purpose. It gives shape. It creates community. And certainly with by far the majority of business owners we work with, all those individuals believe that the money they make gets reinvested back into that business to build out their dream, to build out their service, to build out their value, because ultimately at the end of the day, their wealth creation moment will occur upon the exit. And that exit's interesting because there are only 2 destinations for every business in the world, irrespective as to who you are. It is a closure or a winding down or a sale. 94.6% of businesses started globally fail to sell. It's something we don't believe when we're in the thick of building our businesses because we are driven by passion. And we forget that the ultimate purpose behind that passion needs to be in our own right to turn what we do into an asset that has capital value, that has income growth, and is tradable. In other words, it can continue to do what it's done without me. For if it can't demonstrate that, then what is it that you're selling? So let's talk mindset. COVID comes, Mike Tyson said it. Everyone has a plan until they're punched in the mouth. I've done martial arts for years. It is horrible being punched in the face. The instant shock that you feel is chemical. You have no control over it. And what happens is you take a short, sharp breath from the shock itself, and your body gets filled with cortisol and adrenal hormones, which impede your ability to cope with the crisis. When the COVID lockdown came, people were in denial that it would happen. They went through periods of frustration, which manifested in anger and fear. And for many, they then found themselves in a well of depression. And this grief cycle, which was invented, delivered, and built by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, is the grief cycle that people go through when they lose someone close to them, someone they love. Denial, frustration, depression once a person passes. And her entire purpose was to try and understand how to get people back into a normal life where they could live without that person, but gain what they have lost in terms of purpose, value, meaning. It's no different for a business owner. Many landed up in depression. Few have understood how to experiment. Most were found waiting for things to improve. And I believe, folks, that we're in this for at least another 1.5 to 2 years. Those who did experiment found new paths. They took decisions to double down and have now gone back into integrating their businesses on a completely different basis. You can't do any of this in your business until you yourself understand where you are, psychologically, emotionally. If you're in a place of depression, for whatever reasons, in the first instance, there's no one to say that you're right to be there or wrong to be there. It simply is what it is. But know this, anything that you see, anything that you hear, anything that you learn will always be viewed with a negative orientation. It's the nature of being depressed. As a business owner, very few of us have the privilege where we can dwell in that well of depression. We rely on our businesses for our meaning and purpose. We rely on our businesses for income. It really is important that you move out of depression through experimentation, and I'll talk to you about how you can do that in order to get into a positively orientated, inspired, action-driven mindset. You can't manage your staff unless you understand where they are in this Elizabeth Kubler-Ross change curve either. The circumstances some people are facing at home, many of whom found work a relief from family and family pressures, and perhaps a testy marriage. Unless you understand where your team is, you will, inspired through positive action, be gaining and finding a new way forward and wondering why it's not being adopted and taken on board by your team. You can't work with your customers unless you understand where they sit within this change cycle themselves. Because in a time of stress like we are experiencing right now in this country and globally, the mindset of people matters. It's the mindset that lets you hear, see, and understand things differently from one person to the next, even though it's the exact same set of circumstances. Lead yourself first. Understand where your teams are at, and most importantly, understand where your clients are at. Because where they are at determines how you land and deliver a message of how you can be of value to them. The next thing is, once you're leading yourself, what makes you special? I'm going to share some history with you over here, because it matters. In 1772, this man over here, Ralph Waldo Emerson, a founding father of the United States, an essayist, a deep thinker, turned around and wrote, "Build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door." And in 1772, he was right. There was no effective garbage disposal. People were living on the streets. There was urine. There was everything all over the place. Towns and cities, well, they weren't quite cities, but towns, villages were dirty places. Rats were everywhere. Build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door, he said. Because if you built a mousetrap that worked, it distinguished you from everyone else who was building mousetraps. There were so few products around at the time that that product mindset led to success. This man here, Henry Ford, quoted as saying, you can have any Model T Ford for so long as it is. Someone needs to give me the answer to that. I've forgotten for a moment. What could it be? Was it black? It was. Henry Ford created the assembly production line to bring down the cost of the product, competing with horses at the time. And that product mindset was vital. Then in the mid-60s, early 60s, this chap came about, Philip Kotler, known as the father of the advertising industry. He turned around and he said, no, it's not only products. There are plenty of products around. And he was right in the early 60s. Plenty of products were around. What determines your ability to communicate what you do and what determines your success will be your understanding of market segments. Now, all of us have heard about market segments. I'll give you an example. 95% of my clients are classified as SMEs. That is a market segment. They're viewed that way by banks. They're viewed that way by insurance companies. They're viewed that way by the networks and mobile providers, SMEs. And he was right. If you focus on a segment and you understand how the segment behaves, you can learn to market and reach the segment, and you can learn to service that segment. And today, 95% of all businesses position themselves either on the back of a product where they claim they have better features, or a service where they claim they have better attributes, and they're directed towards a segment. Because we were taught by Emerson and Kotler that that's how it works. And at business schools today, globally, that's what they teach. But here's the thing. It doesn't work anymore because people are throwing hundreds of millions of dollars marketing product features and marketing to segments and getting less and less and less performance out of that. Because what we've noticed, and this is the benefit of working with business owners themselves, all of us only ever spend money on having a problem solved, irrespective as to what the problem is. In the first book I wrote, Sweat Scale Sell, I wrote about how Ishmael, who has a retail store selling 350 to 580,000 Rand wristwatches, learned that the product is not what gave him success, but understanding who he served in relation to the problems he solved for them. Trust me, a 500,000 Rand watch, and all of you in the investment environment should know this, solves a real investment problem for certain types of people in the marketplace. We learned that bad hair creates massive problems for you. No, jokes aside. If we look at what problems mean, Trump got voted into power for the large part of a phrase that he quipped called drain the swamp. For years and years and years, my clients in the US have worked harder and harder every year and believe and feel and experience in reality that they're getting poorer and poorer and poorer relatively. And when I say relatively, I said to who? And they said politicians are getting richer and corporates are getting richer because the two of them cozy up. We pay all the taxes and all our money goes to propping up big corporate institutions through big government tenders, through cozy lobby relationships that those big corporates can afford to have with big politics. And when Trump said drain the swamp, despite the person that he is, despite how he sees the world, despite everything nefarious about him, that's what my clients in the US held on to. They felt that the economy was no longer fair, that the American dream was being compromised, the problem. And here was someone who was going to break the system that had led to an unfair commercial environment. People spend money on getting their problems solved. And even that now is not enough. Because what we are seeing in amongst all our clients in the 4 areas where we operate is that competitors are meeting each other in terms of solving problems for very similar clients using very similar products. And what is determining the edge of competition is the experience the clients have in learning about you, learning about the problem they have, learning about how you solve it, learning about the engagement process and experiencing it with you, and then having that problem solved. The experience, the entire experience a customer or client has with you is what's winning the edge of competition. This woman, Sarah Cooper, 3.5 months ago, had 10,000 Twitter followers. Today she sits with over 2.5 million Twitter followers. A little known comedian created a product aimed at a segment of people who cannot stand to hear Trump speak, but needed to understand what insane policies he'll be introducing because it had created a problem in relation to their business and lives. And what she did is she created a service that works like this.
We hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light. And I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me.
Jokes aside, that her ability to communicate how Trump is thinking and what he's saying in a way where someone who cannot stand the sight of the man but needs to understand what he is saying because of the impact it has on their lives or on their businesses, in her doing those skits of 30 seconds each, she moved from 10,000 Twitter followers to 2.5 million Twitter followers and secured herself Wednesday night on Jimmy Kimmel's show. She shot into significance because she created the experience people needed to have a problem solved. A business is no different. When I say to you, what makes your business special? Don't say service, don't say our product, and don't say it's our relationships, because mostly that's around an individual. When you build an asset of value, the brand of the business needs to be independent of the individual, and the brand of the business needs to own that experience. From there, we move on to momentum. And let's just talk about how we tell the world that we exist. Traditional media, we know, is in dire straits. And for most of us, it's profoundly unaffordable. One ad on 702 in the morning show comes in at about 14,000 Rand. And that's before you paid for the production, which is about a 25,000 Rand effort. One ad yields nothing. Radio is a frequency media. A week on 702, across all hours, sits at about 300,000 Rand. Newspapers, well, are they being read? Do they really have an impact? Big billboards, who can afford them? Are people driving? Or people still working remotely? Television, completely fragmented. The production of a TV ad alone is out of reach for most of us. Traditional media, hard to work with, hard to use to communicate to audiences you want to reach. Digital media, fraught with problems. We were told, create good content, know who you serve, be original in your content. Apply it into Facebook, apply it into LinkedIn, apply it into YouTube, apply it into Google. There's an enormous amount of uncertainty and dissatisfaction around digital investments. And they take 4, 5, 6 months to yield returns. Events, well, we can't do those anymore. Not for now. When will events kick off again? Hopefully they will. Have people developed new habits now because I can attend the event from the comfort of my office? Let's see. Pavement pounding, the long lost art of direct selling and marketing. Who does it? Certainly not taught. Who's prepared to do it? Because this is the hard end of the game. Word of mouth. One, extremely powerful. But let's look at how it comes about. So this individual over here is one of the best known tattoo artists globally. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of tattoo artists. But let's look at what makes him special in terms of what he does. In the first instance, he knows who he is serving. People who want tattoos, they're easier to reach than people in general. You might reach them through Instagram effectively under the hashtag tattoos, or Facebook, or Pinterest, or TikTok. Specifically, what makes him special is that he only makes Star Wars caricatures. He does not do unicorns. He does not do flowers. He does not do skulls. He does not say, I love mom. He only does Star Wars caricatures. And what that led to is him studying the whole Star Wars sequels in extreme detail, collecting every book on Star Wars, every doll and every play system on Star Wars. He plays Star Wars PC games. And through his immersion in Star Wars alone, paying attention each and every time, he has developed an eye for detail and the character of the individuals involved. When he puts a Star Wars tattoo on any individual, a customer, what does that customer do straight afterwards? That customer straight afterwards shows his tattoos to friends, family, and folks who themselves appreciate and have tattoos. And he shows off the beauty of his Star Wars Darth Vader tattoo. And this individual asks the question, hey, where did you get that done? And he said, I got it done from this guy over here who exclusively only serves and delivers Star Wars caricatures in tattoo format. His art, his area of speciality in a very, very crowded marketplace full of tattoo artists is Star Wars caricatures. And through word of mouth, he has built an infamous business. You have to think outside the box. It's becoming increasingly harder to reach your customers. Momentum is crucial for it. If you don't know what makes you special, and you simply advertise, hey, I do tattoos, and you're using expensive digital media where there is no definition, an area of speciality around you, as opposed to saying, I understand who I serve, I've developed an experience that creates the best possible experience to solve the problem that they have, and through that I rely on word of mouth. It's a very, very good case study and something we should all be holding on to. around how in a very difficult world of marketing, we can get our messages out there. Fulfillment. Fulfillment. When you understand what makes you special, and when you understand how to reach the potential clients and customers that you want to reach, how do you go about doing it? How are you spending your time day in and day out? What portion of administration are you involved in? What portion of marketing, selling, product delivery and management? What portion of time do you spend on compliance and administration? Fulfillment is crucial. And fulfillment in every single instance should always be broken up into systems. And by a system, I don't mean technology. Keep it far more simple and far more rudimentary. A system is a series of activities. This is how you make bread. Mix the dough, knead it, mold it, knead it further, shape it, put it in an oven, let it bake, take it out, present it. A series of activities put into a sequence that can be measured and most importantly can be taught. From there, you turn it into a job description. You create your training material so that when I step into your business, if my job is to generate leads, or if my job is to convert leads, or if my job is to fulfill the obligations to customers and leads, you can give me a system where I myself, with little experience, would be able to implement it based on activities in a sequence that can be measured and that can be taught. You can give me the most appropriate and well-defined job description, and you can remunerate me on the outcome and performance of that system because the system itself is measured. Pavlo ran 3 campaigns a month. Campaign 1, 2, and 3. You implement them through these 3 systems. You have a budget of 5,000 Rand per campaign. I expect you to generate, because I myself have built these campaigns and run them for a series of months, 50 on-point leads from each campaign. On that basis, you keep your job, and on that basis, you will be remunerated. I expect you to do it every single month. The moment you've been able to do that with me, it means I now generate leads for your organization. And what it does for you is it frees up time, the most precious and valuable commodity that all of us as business owners have. I'll talk later about how we should spend our time. Across lead generation, lead fulfillment, lead conversion, systems need to be put in place so that when that ship is sailing, every crew member knows exactly what they need to do. Let's talk about growth now. The growth piece is really interesting for me because where are you spending your time? I would love to see some responses from you. Put them on the Q&A. What is your split between operational involvement in your business and strategic involvement in your business? Most business owners that I meet are involved in activities on a day-to-day basis that are classified as operations. They're involved in managing their staff. They're involved in guiding lead generation activities. They're involved in sales itself. They're involved in putting out some fires in operations around fulfillment. They're involved in dealing with some of the administration. They're involved in dealing with some sort of regulatory issues here and there. They're involved in the disruption caused in a business because of a grumpy client or an unhappy staff member. And mostly a Monday turns into a Friday, and a Friday turns into a January, and a January turns into, here we are, September. 1 to 2 weeks working on the business, 3 weeks in the business per month. That's not bad, Mark. You're sitting, let's average it out. You're sitting with about a 20%, 20, 25, yeah, 20%, 20, 25, 30% on the business as opposed to in it. If you're on the business, you're on the bridge. The bridge is about controlling direction. But here's the thing. What the captain of the ship has are all these instruments. And these instruments provide all the measures on how all the systems are being implemented. It gives you a very good sense if your team is running the systems which delivers your positioning, which effectively means it knows who I serve, what problem they have, how I solve that problem, and the experience I create for them in having that problem solved, so they can tell more people like them about me. Where do you spend your time? Crucial question. When you spend your time in the engine room and I knock on your door to acquire your business, is that the life I want in acquiring your business? And if it's a life that I'm prepared to tolerate, I probably don't have the money to acquire your business. Or is this the life that I'm looking for? Because when I acquire businesses on behalf of clients, in effect, what I'm doing is I'm saying the life you had as the business owner and the performance of the business to date reflects the life I'm acquiring and the performance I can have going forward. Where are you spending your time? Let's talk about exit, the final moment, crossing the finish line. As I shared with you, statistically, 94.6% of businesses fail to sell. That's not to say they haven't made good money and earned a very, very good income and living for the business owners. No, it's not to say that at all. It simply means that when it came to sell the business, the potential buyers looked at the business and could not see how without the business owners there, this asset that they understood they're acquiring would continue to be able to earn the income once those business owners themselves leave. When it comes to succession, which is how many professional services businesses exit, 27.3% of succession attempts succeed. And by success, I mean the founder handing the business over to the successor, who acquires the business over a period of time on terms and conditions agreed between the founder and the successor. Mostly what happens in these instances is that the founder, the business owner, needs to remain on for a period of time in order to effectively transfer responsibility of the business itself. And you're doing so in an environment where you no longer own the business, control the business, or manage the business. Success and succession is how most professional services entities exit. But what determines whether you get a 1 multiple or a 6 multiple has a lot to do with who you serve, what problem you solve for them, how effectively your brand is experienced in amongst that market segment, the product mix compared to once-off commissions going all the way through to annuity commissions, the way you reach that market, through which channels and which partners and collaborators you work with in your industry, and most valuably, who is left in the business to make sure that the ship continues to sail when you're no longer on the bridge. 6 answers to build your asset of value. 6 answers. What if it's not a large ship, but a small one? Paul, no different. The principles remain the same, mate. That's what we call each other on a ship. All of us started, most of us started, by a long shot, most of us started as one individual, either consulting in something or 2 partners working together. We had a product, we had a service, we had a skill, we had a capability, we had a customer, and you build out from there. What I can tell you is that in the professional services space, building scale is simply impossible if you're trying to be all things to all people. Because the way I would want my experience to be with you, if I'm a 30-year-old professional in the mobile technology sector who's doing well and aggressively climbing the corporate ladder, my experience with you is fundamentally different to the experience of me 40 years on, late 60s, having built a business in the mobile sector and now looking for an exit. My experience is profoundly different. My risk appetite is profoundly different. And for that reason, whilst you might be offering me the same product that many of your competitors offer, what makes me hear you, see you, trust you, believe in you, is the experience you create for me. And that experience has everything to do with how you alert me to your existence, what kind of media, what kind of messaging are you using, the way that you engage me. In the process of engagement, what you emphasize and what you don't. Because I myself am driven by my set of values and circumstances. And for that reason, I can only hear, see, and understand something that reflects those values back to me. Targeting people like me as a 30-year-old, driven, ambitious corporate animal is a system in its own right. The lead generation system will be made up of content. It will be made up of a medium that you use to reach me. It'll be made up of messaging that will resonate with me. Those in their own right are activities in a sequence that can be measured. Whereas me, an iteration 40 years on, you will reach me through a different media with a different messaging. You will engage me with a very different tone and texture. All of that is a system, from generating the leads to servicing those leads and taking me through the sales journey to fulfilling and delivering on the contract that I've signed with you. When you're a small ship, when you're a small starter, you have to be all things to all people until you find an affinity for the type of client you want to serve. And then you start to focus in and hone in on serving that type of client and building that service into a series of systems. So that when you make your first levels of employment, you're employing people to fulfill parts of the system that create that experience that release time for you to focus on growing the business as opposed to operating the business. I hope that helps. So what is your attitude? There's only one attitude you can afford to have as a business owner, and that is growth the whole way through. Despite the economy, despite the environment, thinking growth forces you to constantly eke out the few opportunities that might exist, or forces you to find alternative ways of doing things in the midst of negativity. And that in its own right is quintessential to your growth journey. You work with what you can control only. What makes you special? It's not a product, and it's certainly not a segment. You have to become an expert at dealing with a particularly well-defined group of clients where you understand them intimately in relation to the problem you solve for them, how the problem comes about, the cost of the problem if not solved, and the experience they want in having that problem in its completeness solved. How do you tell the world you exist? System-generated lead growth, system-generated lead conversion, and that needs a purposeful team. A team can only be so purposeful if they understand what makes your business or brand special, and then understands what they need to do to create that momentum. How do you spend your time in fulfillment? Again, it ought to be, and in many cases it is in your sector, in your industry, system-generated lead fulfillment. But know this, lead fulfillment is what builds the brand. Because this is where the true experience that a well-defined group of customers that you have on board come to life. This is what gets their tongues wagging, positively or negatively, about the brand you're building. What's your role in the business? It has to be strategic growth. Once you've understood who it is that you want to serve, and you have got a really clearly defined value proposition, and you've built a scalable platform to create an experience for them, that once they are on board with you, they themselves will generate word of mouth. You need to start finding the distribution channels to work with, the joint venture partners you need to work with. You need to start creating growth through collaborators to reach more and more and more people or businesses that fit that profile. And finally, there's only one destination for all of us here. Build your business into an asset of value. In Sweat Scale Sell, the first story, the story of Clive, a wealthy individual who built an extremely successful business that cannot exit it because it was driven by passion alone, and the purpose, which ought to be to build an asset of value, was forgotten. I really hope, folks, that helps. I'm exactly on time. It's 12 o'clock. Jonty, you'll be very proud of me. I have not abused my time with you at all. It's an extreme privilege to speak with most of you. I really hope I've answered a lot of your questions. I would encourage you, of course, not because I'm the author, but I would encourage you to read Sweat Scale Sell, How to Build Your Business into an Asset of Value. It's not dry theory. There's nothing academic in it. I'm the least intellectual person around. It's not academic. It is fundamentally practical. Reset, Rebuild, Reignite is a book that I've launched fairly recently, How to Build Your Business to Thrive in a Crisis. How do you, after any crisis, whether it be burst water pipes, whether it be a COVID lockdown, whether it be the loss of a business partner or a key employee, how do you reset your business to be relevant in a consistently changing world? How do you rebuild it? And then how do you make up for any lost opportunities that flow from it? We work exclusively with business owners. If you have clients that are business owners, know this. In working with us, we can help them make the money that you would then take to grow and protect. The more money their businesses are making, the more activity there is for you to service in terms of growing their money and protecting it. Please reach out to me, reach out to us. Let's collaborate around the business owners you work with, and you yourselves as business owners, implement what I've shared with you, please. We need individual business owners to carry this economy. Thank you all very much for having me. Jonty, back over to you.
Pavlo, thank you very much. Having been in the having consulted and had many meetings with hundreds of advisors over the last few years, I feel that advisors are often reliant too much on the advice and relationships, and not nearly enough emphasis is on the brand. And that's key here. So a lot of what you said, I think, will hit home to a lot of advisors. And for those of you who attended, thank you very much. What we will be doing is we've recorded the session, and we will be sending out a note which will include Pavlo's contact details. So if you have any questions or would like to engage Aurik Business Accelerator on a more personal level, you'll have Pavlo's details. But thank you very much for attending, and thank you for all the questions and interactions. And Pavlo, as always, brilliant speaker, well put together. It was very informative, easy to listen to, and thanks for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Go forth, make it happen, build your asset of value.
Cheers. Bye.